Wonderful. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. See everyone's dropping in. Lovely. We'll get started in just a moment, just let people drop in. I know some people haven't used Zoom before as well. Wonderful. Dom, are you okay to give me an indication when we think most people are ready?
Yeah, sure.
Wonderful. Thanks. Wonderful. So about 15 at the moment. Amazing. Should we kick off?
Sounds good.
Wonderful. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Start off with my name is Georgina Crattenden. I'm one of the maritime systems engineers here at the Connect Space Catapult. Thank you so much for joining our workshop today. So this workshop was a bit of a brainwave we had. So it's actually part of one of our projects through ZEVI. But we also, when sending out the invitations, Portsmouth International Port actually came back to us and said that we're running a very similar shore power workshop actually on the same day at the same time. So it's a bit of a brainwave and thought best to combine them together. And doing so, we kind of got double the list and definitely had a few crossovers as well. So I thought that would be a really great way to progress. Okay. Perfect. So 3 stragglers in. Thanks so much for joining. We're hoping this session definitely wants to be a bit more of an informal one. We've definitely got the breakout rooms coming along. I will share the agenda now. So as you can see, we're kind of through this welcome process at the moment. And then what we're going to do is dive into an introduction to the ZEVI projects. So Portsmouth and Port of Aberdeen are both part of ZEVI projects, so zero emission vessel infrastructure projects funded through UK Shore. We're going to have a little bit of an introduction. Portsmouth have kind of a bit more of an extensive session on kind of the technology they've looked at as well, and there's also some other speakers. So that will be a really interesting one. We're also looking to then introduce what our breakout sessions are going to be on. So we have a few different questions, and we want each of the breakout rooms to cycle through those questions. Hopefully they're going to be engaging and informative for everyone. We've got a really great mix of attendees, so some people from network operators, we've got people from port representatives, we also have some industry members as well, also some academics dotted around. So hopefully be a really, really interesting conversation. And then after the breakout rooms, so that will take about an hour. After the breakout rooms, we're then going to come back into our main room and look to highlight sort of our key themes that came out of those discussions, really kind of fostering a bit more conversation, especially in these smaller groups. I think it's good to really get that kind of back and forth of dialogue coming through from different voices and people that may not have met before or had a similar platform before. So it'd be really interesting to see what comes out of that. We also got a mention of this big workshop. So this is through Portsmouth. What they're trying to do is really go through a shore power implementation group. And this is hopefully going to be a series of workshops. So very similar to this one, but on a longer scale. So that'd be good to sort of understand what the industry demand is for that kind of workshop and how that can really impact and be the most impactful that it can be. And then we'll go through sort of closing remarks and next steps. So First off, wanted to run a quick introduction to the Catapult. I know there are a few organisations that may not have interacted with the Connected Place Catapult, and so we wanted to kind of give just a little bit of an introduction. We are, well, we call ourselves the UK's Innovation Accelerator for Cities, Transport and Place Leadership. And so what we try and do is treat transport vectors and cities as nodes, and really try and understand how those can be better links in both their government-funded projects and also private projects. It's a really exciting place to be. I sort of specialise within maritime. Some of my colleagues also specialise within maritime, and we've also got some more general transport engineers as well. So a good mix of kind of representatives from across the company. Always looking for new engagements, so programs like this, and also through more informal engagements as well, so on an individual basis, something that we're very much open to. Just a little bit of a taster of kind of the ecosystems that we work across. So we do have a homes and housing function, obviously the maritime and ports is where we're sat today, air mobility and airports, rails and stations, integrated infrastructure, and we also try and do that sort of leadership thinking. It is really kind of in our messaging. And so hopefully this kind of project will represent that. Wonderful. So a quick introduction to Port of Aberdeen Shore Power and Operation Programme. So again, through UK Shore, through ZEVI, Zero Emission Vessel Infrastructure Programmes, so Innovate UK funded projects. We are part of a consortium, not extensive, but this consortium involves Tyndall Manchester Climate Change Research Centre, Vera Happold, we've got obviously the Port of Aberdeen, there's also the Energy Systems Catapult and the Connected Place Catapult. The consortium also involves some operators, and there is a DNO in there as well. We do have a few members that have kind of given their time for this afternoon as well, who will be within the breakout sessions. So please do make yourselves known and sort of do shout out in the breakout rooms, because that would be really, really useful. Essentially, this work builds on some of the previous UK Shore work that was done as part of the Clean Maritime Demonstration Competition. So that funding was around the feasibility studies, whereas now this current programme is looking to facilitate the implementation and then investigate the operational design. So this is really where we're coming down into understanding well, the particulars of how these systems can work. Particularly working with Energy Systems Catapult, it's been really interesting to kind of understand their perspective of these issues, and kind of really pushing forward for change, especially within the industry. So then the wider aims of the ZEVI project in general is to really encourage port uptake of these systems, and that obviously comes from a port and operator perspective. So kind of understanding what those blockers are, and how those can be overcome. There's obviously a question of regulation in there. There's a question of capacity for energy systems as well. So that's been really interesting to kind of get to the crux of. Yeah, so then this workshop sits within CPC's impact assessment work. So what we're trying to do is understand what this project in particular means and where we've linked up now with Portsmouth. It's been really interesting to kind of see those crossovers, and sort of our partnership is relatively fresh. So it's going to be, well, curious for sort of as a team level to see the similarities and the differences and potentially some of those shared learnings. Wonderful. All right, I will now hand over to Ellie, who is our representative from Portsmouth, to talk through the Sea Change project.
Lovely, thank you. I'm going to turn my camera off in a second just to save on bandwidth, just in case. But it's lovely to see everyone, lots of familiar faces on the call, which is always nice. And yeah, thank you to the team at CPC for the Great Minds Think Alike workshop that this is, and being able to combine forces. And like Georgie said, I really do think we'll get so much more out of this. So lovely to see some good members. Oh yeah?
Your microphone's really, really crackly. Do you want to fiddle with the lead or something?
Oh gosh, this has not gone well already. Thank you, David. How's this?
So, unless it's just me.
Is this better? Is this any better?
It's still quite a bit crackly.
2 seconds. I'll just unplug and replug.
Noise.
Okay, how's that, guys?
If that doesn't fix it, nothing will.
Is this better?
Still a bit crackly, Ellie. Can you
Oh.
unplug and go from there? Or is it...
I'm just going to unplug entirely, guys. Give me 5 seconds, and I will just get rid of this stupid headphone. Right. The drama. Can everyone hear me now?
I see it crackly though. I'm not sure why. Oh, do you want to say something else?
Cracklier since I've been on the call, or shall I try my headphones again? Is that any better?
No, it's a bit bouncy. Do you want to try leaving back maybe?
2 seconds.
No worries.
Okay, I'm just going to keep talking. Tell me
We'll
when.
do. We'll do.
How is now?
A little bit better. Do you want to go ahead, and if it gets too bad, we can we'll ask.
Okay.
You
No problem. I will try my best. I'll put it very close to my mouth and we'll hope for the best. But yes, so I'm Ellie. I work at Portsmouth International Port. I'm the Environment and Sustainability Coordinator there. And I've been working with the Sea Change project team basically since it came around in February last year. So I'm joined by Ali, Nicole and Alex Barter today, who will hopefully present their slides with less drama and better audio quality than I have done. But I'll introduce those guys a little bit later. But before I kick off and tell you all about our project, I just want to take you on a very quick journey of how we got here at Portsmouth first. So, Georgie, if I could have the next slide, please. So on this little timeline, I've just included a couple of key dates that I think are really important to mention. So back in 2017, our biggest customer, who are Britain Ferries, they started their fleet renewal, which was a over €500 million investment, which culminates in lots and lots of new vessels that are coming into play. So we had the Galicia, which was an E-flexor, and then we had 2 LNG ships, the Salamanca and the Santona, a couple of years back now. And then in 2025, they're building 2 brand new ships, and they'll be LNG hybrid electric ferries, which are really, really exciting. And that's a huge part of the reason why we at Portsmouth knew that we needed to look into shore power in our future to be able to cater to what our customers' demands were. Also in 2019, we are a municipal port. We're by our local council here in Portsmouth, and I think it's really important to mention that they did declare a climate emergency, and they started looking at implementing new policies such as the clean air zone to help tackle these existing problems that are across the city. And that allowed us to start working on some really exciting sustainability and innovation projects. So this included CMDC1 and the Shape UK project, which was all around hydrogen production at our site. And then it also looked at the PESO project, which is a battery project. And what was really great about that is that we were introduced to the majority of our Sea Change project partners at this stage, but we just didn't know that we would all have to be stuck together for many more years yet to come at that stage. So in late 2022, the port secured a 15 MVA grid upgrade. So that came at an investment of £3 million from our local council. And what was really, really interesting, I mean, for those on the call who are either in the process or have experience of getting an upgrade from their DNO, it's a very difficult process. You never know how much you're going to get, and you have to sit in a queue for what seems like an eternity. But what we were told at the time is that if we didn't get this level of energy that we secured, we wouldn't get something of that level here on Portsmouth Island until at least 2030. So it was absolutely paramount that we got it when we did, which was fantastic. And then just a couple months later, ZEVI was launched. So ZEVI was launched in February last year, and that's when our Sea Change project all got together, wrote the Sea Change project, and were very fortunately awarded £19.8 million in funding. And that came with an additional £4.6 million of investment from our local council. So just over £7.5 million spent in just a few months on our shore power provision here at the port. So if I just flip over to the next slide, please. So the Sea Change project, in a nutshell, is to be able to design, build and operate a shore power system across 3 of our busiest berths, and those are berths 2, 3 and 4. Now, for those who aren't familiar with Portsmouth, berth 2 is our biggest berth, and that's where we're able to have ferry and cruise vessels come alongside. But berths 3 and 4 are predominantly, if you drive past every day, where you'll see those Brittany Ferries vessels day in and day out. So this project's going to allow those Brittany Ferries vessels and visiting cruise ships to utilise shore power whilst they're alongside, and our 15 MVA grid upgrade is provided on a green energy tariff. And so the whole consortium is made up of us at the port, Brittany Ferries, Swan Barton, Iotics, Barter for Things, the University of Portsmouth and MSE International. And I think what made our project quite special and stand out is because we were able to secure the power before the project began. And the amount of power that we secured, we'll be able to do something that's not really being done in the UK just yet, which is allow the simultaneous powering of vessels across those different berths at the same time, and it will be a different frequency and voltage and ship-to-shore connection requirements. So quite complex, quite ambitious, but we're getting it done. And if I just move on to the next slide.
Brilliant. Ellie, your
So this
video is getting quite crackly. Is it worth leaving and rejoining potentially?
I'm ever so sorry about this. I really am. Let me just quickly go out. 30 seconds max.
Ellie, are you there?
Hello.
Hello.
Is that better or
It's much better.
crackly? Oh, thank God. I didn't know what I was going to do otherwise. Thank you. Okay.
Go on.
Okay, here we are. Right, I'll breeze through this one. So this is just a schematic of the new Brittany Ferries vessels that I was referring to earlier. I wanted to show this just because of the LNG hybrid electric element to it. So because of those batteries that are on board, what's really, really exciting about these new vessels is that when they start to come into Portsmouth Harbour, they'll be able to turn off their auxiliary engines before entering the harbour. So they'll manoeuvre in and out of Portsmouth, come alongside, have a battery recharge and provide that hotelling load, and then also leave the port and harbour just running on solely battery power. This is a huge deal for us here at the port and for Brittany Ferries, because we're going to be able to provide a facility that allows these vessels to reach their absolute full potential. So we're really, really excited about that element. But if I just flip over to the next slide, please. This just goes through a couple of the other project outcomes that we're looking at, because it's not just shore power we're doing in this project. Obviously, the Pezzo battery that I mentioned before, that's going to be updated and utilised whilst we're in this project as well. Looking at optimizations around charging for times of low carbon, intensity or low cost. The team at B4T are putting out more air quality monitors across our site and the city, and all of the data that will be gathered around shore power usage, operations, air quality are all going to be visualized in a dashboard. You've got the team at Iotics and Ali, who's on the call today, who will explain to you about how they'll selectively and securely share data across all of our project partners, and the really exciting work that they're doing with the knowledge graph functions as well. And then, of course, I work with the university. They're here to keep us honest and make sure, we're doing what we're saying we're doing, and analyze and plan and assess the data that comes from our project. And then our team at MSE International, who continue to exploit and communicate all of our project outcomes. Because for those who perhaps aren't familiar, the ZEVI project, you are funded for 18 months, but then you are also tied into a 3-year demonstrator phase, in which it is unfunded. But that means that we'll just continue to report on regular key metrics of our success or our challenges throughout those next 3 years. So if I just pop on to the next slide, before I pass over to Ali and Alex, I thought it would be interesting for us to be able to share actually how we're getting on when it came to the electrical and the civils work packages here at the port, because we've made so much progress. Now, none of this is 100%, And for those ports on the call today who perhaps are starting their shore power journey, they'll understand that the planning stage will take a really, really long time, because simply you just don't want to get it wrong. You have to get it right the first time, especially in our tiny little port. We can't be disrupting our customers on a regular basis. So I'll just take you through this part, which shows around the substation and the civils work packages. So under number 1, which you can see at the bottom of the picture, that is where our dedicated substation will be built for our shore power supply. And that is just in its final process at the moment, and that location has been determined. Now, we're going to have over 500 meters of ducted cables running across our site. And we actually have, we've chosen to do 500 meters. We probably could have done it for less and it would have cost us less, but the impact on our operations would have been significant. We're following a single car lane all the way through our port. So whilst it may take us longer to get there, it will be much more less disruptive. And then once we get to the berths, if you see the number 3 in the top left-hand side of the picture where the berths are, there'll be over 100 meters worth of ducted networks as well there, and cables to connect the shore power equipment to all 3 berths. Now, the next slide, if that's all right, Georgie, is showing a little bit more about where we put that equipment. Now, we've had to be very creative with the layout of our equipment so far. I mean, I think the majority of ports who will be on the call will agree that space is really a premium at their ports, especially when they're talking about the berths. You want as much space as possible for your operational procedures when different vessels come in and require different spaces for different things. So yes, we've had to be very creative. And as you can see in the section that I've labeled number 1, a lot of the shore power electrical equipment, things like the transformers, the switchgear and all of that stuff has been designed to be located underneath the viaducts of our link spans. So that's saved a lot of space for us, because at the moment it's where we will park port vehicles and things like that. So we can easily move those out and put that really important equipment underneath there. In number 2, I've put that in 2 locations because, as you'll be able to see on berths 3, 4 and 2, we will be able to offer shore power to visiting ferry vessels. So it's very, very small pink boxes, and above them you can see those stationary jib cranes. Those will be provided by ShoreLink, and those will give the provision of shore power to visiting ro-ro vessels. And then under number 3, that green line that goes all the way down that longest berth, that's our berth 2, and that's our dedicated cable management system for cruise vessels. So this one needs a lot longer space. It's a really, really big piece of kit. But these vessels, these cruise vessels are ginormous sometimes, it feels like, and they'll have different connection requirements. So we need the flexibility of the entire berth, basically. So my last slide is just on the next one for now, and then I'll pass over. And it's just to talk about the power distribution and what it looks like here at the port. Now, I want to strongly caveat that I'm not an engineer, but I've been briefed by my engineers, so I will do my absolute best, but I just thought it was important to try and explain this for you. So when our dedicated shore power supply comes in from the grid, it will be supplied at 33 kV. And then the transformers on the site will step that down to 11 kV, which is the voltage that's required for the vessels. Now, we'll have 2 lots of static frequency converters, one allowing for 50 hertz, one allowing for 60 hertz. And then this will be distributed across all 3 berths. That's how we're going to achieve what I mentioned before, that multi-berth, multi-frequency, multi-user experience. And we've also got on there all about the battery. The piezo battery is under ESS battery. And this is our proof of concept, because the battery itself is quite small. But now we're going to be able to understand and scale up the battery for our future use. So that's that one. So I'll pass over to Alex Barter now. So he's from Barter for Things. And then he will just take you through this next slide. Alex?
Great. Thanks, Ellie. Well rescued. You did well to come back on that one. Fair play. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I'm trying to do this in 2 minutes. I've got 3 questions, I suppose, that you'd be asking. One is, why is air quality essential? Why B4T a part of the equation? And why is Zevi doing something slightly different? Okay, so if I was to take you through that imaginary question, so you know, from a clean maritime perspective, you know, did your electrification work? So imagine that's a question, and your response is, well, yes, we can prove X% reduction in local pollutants per Y percentage of X megatons per annum. And by the way, it's looking good today. So that's, I think that's fundamental to the project, is to prove that shore power has been an effective intervention and is delivered on, you know, the clues in the title, Clean Maritime. So from a B4T perspective, we've been involved with Portsmouth Port since early 2020. So the timeline on the top of my slide just shows how our involvement has, has evolved over time with Portsmouth and where we're going. So we secured the original air quality project really from a competitive procurement where we came top out of 5 potential contractors. And the difference with us is we'd never actually built an air quality monitor, and all the others had. So why were we picked to do something different? And the answer was twofold. One was to understand the context of what we're trying to do in the maritime environment. And the second was to have an evolving roadmap through different iterations and different net zero interventions. So what are we doing different with Zevi? So Zevi's been a part development for us, part expansion. In terms of development, one of the first things we've done is to go through a human-centric design phase to communicate the different types of air quality data that we're producing at different levels, whether that would be to your chief exec or to your passenger walking through the terminal who needs that immediate, within 2 seconds, understand what they're seeing, through to the analysts who need to answer that question. We've done X% over Y megatonnage in the last year, and by the way, we're looking good, down to, is this data, is it proper quality? Are our academic partners at Portsmouth University, are they happy that this data is absolutely bona fide? And the next thing that we've done in Zevi is to integrate the energy management system data and vessel data. So we've gone a bit beyond the scope with the vessel data, and we're finding some really, really interesting insights and possibilities by synchronizing our vessel and our energy and our air quality data. So for us as a business, and what has Zevi done for us as B4T, it's given us a platform into some international business development. So we've been to Singapore this year already, and we've built up some good opportunities out in Singapore, which is the second largest shipping hub in the world. We're also looking at developing some green corridor business, which is more sort of APAC region. Our technology is adapting. So the more we're being involved in the maritime sector and with our partners at Portsmouth University, the more we're fine-tuning all of these different parameters that interact together and drive new insights. We have also, in the spirit of roadmap, we've just secured a project to develop ammonia sensing as part of our portfolio. This is more important for the Asia market, where alternative fuels as well as electrification, ammonia is playing a leading role there. And our final need and our final contribution will be towards policy. So we already know that the air quality policy, or UK government policy, is out in draft this year. So hopefully for next year, the work that we're doing on ZEVI will be some evidence base to help define that policy and regulation moving forward. And I think that's it, Georgie. Over to Ali.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Georgie. If we can move on. So exactly as Ellie outlined in her introduction and overview, the IOTIC's role in the Sea Change project is enabling the secure and selective sharing of information between each of the organizations in what you can see as the top right, what's called a federated knowledge graph, essentially a way of creating relationships between different assets and pieces of information, but where everyone retains control of their data. We don't want to create a centralized data store. We don't want people to have to give up their data. What we want to be able is people to share their data, but also to understand how their data interrelates. Because if we understand that, then we can start querying that information intelligently. So on the bottom right here, you'll see the ability to start doing intelligent queries across a network. So not just what's in my data, but as I look across the data, can I start asking questions? And this ultimately provides a framework for the adoption of things like AI and machine learning. And why is this the necessary next step? Because we have to move from the proof points of projects like ZEVI to sustainable business as usual. Net zero and improvement of air qualities are not a zero-sum single objective game, i.e., it's not a case that we just say, well, the only thing that matters is reducing energy consumption, or the only thing that matters is reducing air quality, because we also have commercial pressures. We have drivers around usage. We have drivers around how people choose to live and work in cities and in and around ports. The reality is that there are multiple pressures from across different industries and sectors. I was on with the clean energy marine hubs yesterday, in Schneider and various others, GE Vernova, talking about the burdens on the networks globally from the electrification, not only of our ports, but also of our road networks, our homes and our infrastructure. So how can we start to share that information beyond the individual use cases that we have and the projects that we have, and ensuring that we can take this technology that ZEVI has enabled to be proved, this federated knowledge graph, as we go through the demonstration phase that Ellie's talking about, and look for the real benefits and values that exist. So taking B4T's air quality piece, well, how does that relate to Portsmouth County Council and their air quality goals? How will that relate to optimization of multimodal transport and ensuring that not only are we hitting our net zero targets, but that we're also doing it in a way that is inclusive and doesn't leave citizens behind in any way? So we have these digital enablers within our projects, but what we have to start to do is look at how they exist beyond projects and can be installed as enablers for that business as usual piece. We've proved that they work, we've proved that they sit alongside pieces, but as we move into this demonstration phase, really I think that what next is looking beyond the demonstration borders to how ports work with each other. And Alex showed on his slide those kind of green corridors and digital corridors that exist. The ferries that are docking at Portsmouth from Brittany are not only obviously going to Portsmouth, that would be no offense to Portsmouth at all, but quite a dull ferry journey. They have a destination. So how can we start linking these graphs and these interested pieces together so that we can start understanding the real impact, the intervention and the ROI, so that we can prioritize our energy network and ensure that we're delivering power across, as I say, these interdependent requirements that I believe that machine learning and AI and pattern recognition technologies will help us to identify the optimum balance, but only if it can securely access information from organizations that won't want to share all their operational information or commercially sensitive information, but can actually give us a scalable and repeatable pattern for optimization, not only within the maritime sector, but across the UK and ultimately globally. Thank you. Back to Ellie.
Thank you, Ali. Lucky thing there's only 2 people from the port on the call today, Ali. It's only us 2 that have taken offence, but that's fine. I've only got one more slide left to do, and then hopefully we might even be early for our breakout rooms. But in the breakout room topics, we're going to discuss lots of different things. And one of them was around the opportunities and the challenges. So I thought it was only fair to give a quick nod to that before we carried on. Because when we were building what our Sea Change project could look like, we were so fortunate to be able to connect with different ports in Europe and North America who were shore power ready, and they shared so much information with us. And to be honest, it was invaluable for our team, whether they sat on the commercial team, the engineering team, or me here in the sustainability space. And we want to do the same. And I'll talk a bit more about SPIG after our breakout sessions, but that's where a lot of that inspiration has come from. So a couple of the opportunities and challenges, and Alex and Ali have actually both nodded to these in their slides previously. But if it wasn't clear before, a shore power project of this size for us as a municipal port simply would not be possible had it not been for government funding. We would have not been able to afford to do this. The investment and costs up front would have made the business case for this simply impossible. So continued government support and funding is really, really important to get more shore power projects off the ground. The ongoing operational costs are certainly a challenge for us. You know, when you get these large grid upgrades, you're charged for your entire capacity, not necessarily how much energy you've used. And a real sticking point for our customers is that shore power is an expensive option for them when they look at MGO or HFO, whatever fuel choice they may be on before. Turning on to shore power will be more expensive, but the more customers who utilize the system, the cheaper it will become. Regulation space. So there are regulations coming out that have been postponed and postponed and postponed. But they do provide glimmers of hope for us. And we do feel like more direction is needed when it comes to emissions at birth, who accounts for them, and how they have to be accounted for. And again, that's something that we go on to discuss in the breakout rooms, because we do think it's probably a tough topic for vessel operators and port authorities to get over. But things in the EU are certainly moving with the Fit for 55 and the EU ETS. But when we talk to our different vessel operators, they talk to us about how challenging some of those regulations are. So what can we do? What can we learn from? And how can the UK provide a better experience when it comes to shore power? But really, we do actually want to make a difference, especially here in Portsmouth, who suffers from poor air quality. I mean, if I look out my office window, I could throw a stone and it would reach residential housing. And about 500 meters away, it's a primary school as well. So we have a real opportunity to be a better neighbour here in the city. And we want to grow our business, but we want to do it in the right way and be able to offer these different services to customers, which will help avoid emissions at birth and help hopefully improve air quality across the city as well. So those are just a few of the opportunities and a few of the challenges that we're facing in our project. And hopefully that's just made you think about possibly your own. And we can pick those up in the different breakout rooms. But that's everything from the Sea Change project. So thank you very, very much for your time. And I do apologise again about my horrible microphone at the start. But we'll probably go back to the agenda now, and then Georgie will talk about the different breakout rooms.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much. And thank you to Ali and Alex as well for contributions. So yeah, as Ali hinted to there, I'm now going to have a quick introduction to what we want our breakout rooms to be discussing. So we have these kind of 4 main questions, and below are kind of some prompts and some considerations. We will have this slide showing in each of the breakout rooms as well, just for reference and to make sure that we're not drifting too far. We also have facilitators, so there'll be 2 facilitators for each group, 3 groups total with 2 facilitators within them. And we really want to encourage sort of an open discussion. It'd be really great to have sort of, as you contribute, if you could mention your name and mention kind of where you're from, that would be really useful. I also want to mention that these breakout sessions and the rest of the session will be recorded as well, just for people's reference. So yeah, let's kind of have a quick look at these different topics. So first of all, we want to talk about influential metrics. So understanding what needs to be reported from projects such as these in order to influence others. So that kind of covers a little bit about dissemination as well. We'll talk about dissemination right at the very end. but we really wanted to focus in these questions around what are the things that need to be communicated in order to demonstrate success, or even project issues and things that have come up to really sort of spark that collaboration. Because as Ellie said, it's not one person and one organization that's able to do this. It really is about multiple organizations, regionally, nationally, all coming together to be able to influence each other and share those learnings. So that would be really interesting. Secondly, we want to talk about the opportunities and challenges. So we did try to make these discussion topics quite distinct, but obviously there might be a little bit of flow over, but that's absolutely fine. So these are around the business cases. So why isn't shore power a business case as it is? There are obviously a few bigger issues that are kind of staring us in the face when we look at that question. Things such as the economics, space as well, things like that. It would be really great to have a really good in-depth discussion about different people's perspectives of the opportunities and challenges. Also import generation, definitely worth mentioning, around how that energy capacity can be bridged a little bit. So the third one is around monitoring and digitalization. So how these factors and how these measurement tools can really help to, again, influence the ultimate uptake of these technologies, code of practices, and another interesting point is going to be around that vessel and port interaction. So where does it come into influencing your customers from a port perspective, and influencing your business partners from an operator perspective? Hopefully we do have a few port operators with us, so that should be a really interesting conversation. And then finally, investigating demand. So decarbonisation is a very wide aim to have. Sort of looking through the work that we do at the Catapult, sort of decarbonisation is a really big aim and a really wide scope. And so kind of getting that down into little chunks, sort of understanding what those handfuls are that can be tangibly done, or can be tangibly measured, first of all, and then also communicated, I think is an interesting topic and route for discussion. So some of the pros and cons about implementing, hopefully a bit more separate to the business cases, but some of the pros and cons of actually implementing the technology and having that available, potentially on sort of a commercial level as well. It might be an interesting discussion. And then some of the timescales is another interesting discussion. So sort of what are the personal sustainability aims that you have as a port or as an organization, and how does that then relate to how you want to implement shore power? Wonderful. Okay, hopefully everyone is okay with that. I think best practice now is just to launch into those breakout rooms. Please do speak up. There should be a little note coming up to say, please join the room. So we will see you all in the respective rooms. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Sorry, Dominic, would you mind putting me back into room 1?
Can you
Hello.
hear me? Hi.
Sorry, could you put me into room 1
Okay.
again? Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, not to worry. Dom is the host. Let me see if I can get hold of him. So just bear with me.
Thank you.
Okay. Did it not put you in, or did you come out of it?
I got back. I got out of it again.
Okay, it says
Accidentally, yeah.
okay. Not joined. I can move. It says allow you to move to group 2 or group 3.
Yeah, anything.
Anything, is it? Okay. Let me move you to group 2. And
All
then what
right,
I'll do
thank you.
is I'll see if I can bring you back again.
Thank you very much.
All right. Can you hear me, Dom?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Are you going to stay in this main room for a while?
Yeah. Erica actually bombed out and I put her back into group 1. So yeah, thankfully I just clicked and it allowed me to say, okay, put her into the group 2, which I did, and I brought her back into group 1. So yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Just yeah, let me know if there's any issues with the main room. Are you also able to send me like a Teams message
Yeah.
when you have to leave this room, and then I can just periodically check it after that.
Yeah. Are you going to one of the other rooms?
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in group 1 now.
Okay, you jump in. I'll just monitor this in the meantime.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot for that.
If you do, I'll send Georgie a message because there is some questions. I'm not sure whether we're going to open up the questions when the guys presented or we do it at the end, but I'll just check with Georgie how she wants to drive it.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
No worries. Catch you later.
Yes, bye.
Wonderful. I see everyone's dropping back in. I hope everyone had interesting conversations. We definitely did in our group. Wonderful. I will share my screen again. Okay, same slide, but slightly different. Thank you very much, everyone that participated in the working groups. Really appreciate that. I think now it would be good to have a little bit of a conversation around what some of those key aspects were. Obviously, no comparison to the absolute wealth of notes that our scribes have taken. So thank you very much for those scribes as well. We look forward to processing that as well and having a slightly more formal output. Okay, let's start. Should we start with, I don't imagine that there'll be topics or key takeaways relative to each sort of question in particular, but if there are, it'd be great to know. But Kirsty, Patricia, did you guys want to go first in terms of some of the key takeaways, or would you prefer to hand that and have a think? Oh, sorry, I'm mute, Patricia.
Of course it's not. I was on mute. Well, we haven't prepared anything yet, but it was an interesting conversation because we ended up in a room very well balanced between Aberdeen and Portsmouth International Port. So we had the experience of two completely different scales of port with different activities. We start to talk about the metrics and what is important. Of course, recouping cost of the investment is the most pressing issue when you're looking at such a big scale investment. And because we have different type of activities and different type of vessels also that are using the two ports, this is linking to different type of opportunities and challenges. Whilst, for example, in Portsmouth, you got a few operators with specific needs. In Aberdeen, you got a wider number of vessels that require different type of activities and also different type of fuels. We looked at air quality as one of the main metrics, purely because each city is co-located within the ports. So activities within the port will impact the cities and people living in those cities as well. So air quality is one of the main metrics that we got, not simply looking at carbon, but also at NOx and SOx and ammonia that might become an issue in the future. We looked into different and alternative fuels. What was the main reason that Portsmouth moved towards shore power and not hydrogen? And we also looked at the type of governance that you might have. In the UK, for example, we tend to think that sharing data and allowing better monitoring of the port's performance, that could be an issue for some organization. We really need to look at a federated approach, which is something that at the moment is trialed by Ports of Portsmouth with IOTICS, and understanding the various levels of governance will give us more freedom in the future, especially around data and what data may be available. There are several levels of granularity of data that can be disclosed in an aggregated and anonymized way, and this will allow to monitor the performance at various levels, as long there is this collaborative attitude towards the decarbonization of the ports. We looked at the importance of the system thinking and understanding the supply chain. We're all living in, pardon the puns, in connected places. So it's important to understand the wider ecosystem and not just what the ports is doing in isolation. Majority of the benefits for the cities are linked to the fact that there is a better transparency on the activities and the carbon emissions and their quality that may be linked to the port activities. And finally, we looked at the evolution of trust as a way to create more transparency, to understand the demand for energy, but also the performance of the shore power itself. There was someone that did an interesting remark on a previous studies around the different level of trust, and the trust depends on the type of organization that are going to share the data. So whilst you can share the data between ports and vessel operators, or between ports and DNOs, and each of these level of trust enables different performance measure down the line. There is still a fear that if you share the data, you might have issues. But there is also a new approach looking at federation and hierarchy of stakeholders that allow us to share in an anonymized way the data. And this could help us in improving our planning strategies, but also the scaling up opportunities within the port. This is everything from room 2.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Very extensive. Perfect. Simon, did you want to go next from Team Ellie?
Yeah. Yep, certainly. So we had 3 ports represented in our group. So that was Portland, Poole, and Aberdeen. So that highlighted the fact that ports around the UK and indeed around the world, they're all different. They all have unique challenges, and their situation with regard to their ability and drivers for providing shore power are different. But the key issue that we identified, which won't come as any surprise, was the availability of sufficient power to supply shore power demand, the timeliness of reinforcing the grid, if that's what is required, and the costs of doing so. So as an example, Portland at the moment, the whole of the island of Portland basically uses all the power that Portland has provided to it, including the port. So there isn't, as things stand, there is no spare capacity to provide shore power. However, jumping ahead to the demand discussion, some users, notably cruise ships, will be required to take shore power. So there is a real risk to the business of the port if they can't come up with a timely solution. Part of that solution is, and it's an opportunity and for the whole port and the community around understanding the problem and providing the solutions, is to build upon the relationships with customers to understand their drivers and demands, and sharing data and solutions and thinking between ports through forums like this, but others too, the British Port Association and others, is all valuable stuff. The Port of Bergen in Norway was heralded as an exemplar of good practice and being very well developed. So I think some in our group who have availed themselves of that experience would recommend talking to Bergen and perhaps going for a visit. We had there's a difference in the adopted methodology for measuring CO2 emissions from the port with a couple of ports, Aberdeen and Poole. Their default method is to include CO2 from visiting ships in their carbon inventory. They keep the numbers for comparison purposes, not including it, but they have that is their approach, which is different to other ports. And we don't have a solution, but we can see that energy storage systems, but for ports that are very constrained by their grid capacity and the timeline for, or possibility at all, of reinforcing it. Renewable, local generation, renewables, and energy storage are obviously potentially part of the solution. And Kit from Swanbarton has offered a little teach-in on the subject to the ports who are, because that's where their expertise lies, a teach-in on the subject to the ports who were in our group, which is an offer that has been accepted.
Wonderful.
That's it.
Thank you very much, Simon. Yeah, sounds a lot for that session. It'll be good to learn a little bit more from people who actually know how to process it and use it. So that'd be wonderful. So in terms of group one, we had representatives from Dover, DP World Southampton, Shoreham, and also Port of London Authority. So a really interesting conversation around potentially our conversation kind of flowed almost into one. I think all of these topics definitely kind of left room to kind of flow into each other. A lot around kind of shore power opportunities, some of the challenges predominantly around grid capacity and bridging that gap between available energy and required energy based on people coming into port. Equally, a discussion around how to measure what that energy demand is going to be, and sort of potentially a lack of knowledge and methodologies around being able to understand that prior to signing up for, you know, massive grid capacity upgrades or provisioning any sort of renewable additional resources. It was really about kind of understanding that granularity as well. I think that's a really important point that came out of our discussion around kind of how these projects that are getting funded and are able to be funded by government money, how those can then form parts of the bigger picture. Obviously, minute differences and obviously macro differences between each of the organizations are incredibly apt, and no one solution is going to fit all of those organizations. However, understanding how we can tailor feedback from projects such as these EVI projects, really tailor that for whoever that person is that's going to be reading it at each port and at each organization stage. There's also a discussion of kind of how an organization can be influenced by the people trying to use the port, and also the neighboring organizations, or the discussion across Dover and Calais, and kind of the differences that have been experienced by both of the authorities there. So yeah, just a really interesting conversation, I think, around, I think the filling of gaps, I think, was an interesting topic to go down, and sort of especially understanding that some ports just aren't ready for certain technologies. And so really being able to understand which ports are likely to, and the phrase pinning the tail on the donkey was used to kind of really make sure that a port is going to be able to forthrightly make a decision on what technology they want and what technology they can offer, and make sure that that's going to be completed through the transition and supply as well. So yeah, a really, really interesting conversation. I think, so we are slightly ahead of schedule. If we take a short break, maybe do 10 minutes, get a cup of tea, get some water, go to the loo. If we do that, we'll then come back and have a little bit of a discussion around future workshops, specifically around SPIG, and then we can talk about some next steps and dissemination processes. So wonderful. If everyone's okay with that, we will reconvene at 3:42. It's very specific. Round that up however you like. And yeah, we'll chat then. Thank you very much.
Yeah, 3:42. We're back.
Very precise. Very, very precise. Wonderful. Hopefully we haven't lost too many people. I think so. We're actually running ahead of schedule now. So the suggestion is made, well, the idea for the remainder of the time is we were going to run through this big membership. So a little bit of a talk from Ellie around kind of what that means, and kind of how to get involved, and all those kind of good things. And also a discussion around some of the workshop dissemination. So, you know, what do people want to see from this workshop and then further workshops? Also, it's been mentioned that it might be worth having a Q&A, just because there aren't too many people in the meeting, so it might be good just to have kind of that open discussion. Ellie, do you prefer? Is there a particular order you would prefer? Maybe the Q&A first, or do you want to talk about SPIG first? A bit more flexible now, I think.
I'm very easy, very easy. I don't mind just quickly talking through SPIG because it'll only take me a few minutes.
Yeah.
And we never know how long my mic will last for, so you know.
It's very true.
Very true. Hopefully you can hear me okay. But all it was, so it's nice to see that quite a few ports who are on the call I've already got in touch with about SPIG membership. So it stands for Shore Power Engineering Group. Nice sounding acronym ever before. Obviously changed a lot better. But what we're basically trying to do in SPIG is get shore power conversations started across the UK port sector in a bit more of a tailored way. So in our project, and like I've said to the ports that were on my breakout room, when we were building our application for Sea Change, we were so fortunate to be able to talk to other shore power ready ports in Canada and across Europe who shared a lot of information and gave us a lot of guidance when it came to designing what our shore power system could look like and should look like. And that was as far as health and safety concerns to commercial agreements. And we felt very strongly that we needed to return that favour and continue that transparent, shared knowledge exchange. So we started reaching out to ports that we knew and were familiar with, that we understood were starting their shore power journey, perhaps a little bit further along. And all it's going to be a call, maybe an hour and a half long, every couple of months between now and the end of our funded period of our project, where you can receive updates from us about our project. You could come to us with problems or opportunities or challenges that you want to discuss as part of the forum. And we're going to take a lot of inspiration from this workshop as well and try and find the right people or organisations that we think could come to future SPIG calls, whether that be the Port of Bergen, who've been mentioned a couple of times, whether that be the DNO, whether that be electrical infrastructure providers, whoever we can get round the table that you need to ask those questions to from the journey that we've had so far. If we can reach out to them and ask, then that's absolutely fine. So I'm already seeing messages pop up about being part of it. So that's my next bit. So that's absolutely fantastic, Anthony. We'd love to have you. The more the merrier. I'll share my details after this call. If you'd like to be part of the calls moving forward, we have a terms of reference that I can send out to you, so you're familiar with what it will look and feel like. And the next call will probably in a month or so. So that's everything from SPIG. If you have any questions, you know where I am, and hopefully we will get to see a few more people on the call as well.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Wonderful. If there are any questions, so Ellie, there is a question for you in the Q&A at the moment. I don't know if you can spot that on your Zoom call. Any more questions, please do drop them into either the chat or into the Q&A, and we can go through those now. Ellie, did you want to grab that one from Simon quickly?
I'm ever so sorry, I can't see the one from Simon. I can only just see the chat box. 2 seconds, let me see.
That's okay. If you hit more, there should be like a Q&A.
Ellie, it says, how big is the battery in megawatt hour capacity and how long will it take to fully charge it? Which isn't for you to answer, it's for our colleagues at, well, you can
Fabulous.
answer.
Swan Barton
if
it
they're
is.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. Kit, are you still on the call? I think so.
So I'm hoping Chris is going to jump in.
There we go.
Yeah, the batteries, it's a very small battery, so it's only 250 kilowatt hours, and it's got 100 kilowatt power output.
So at which point Simon's now really disappointed. It was a battery that was already on site from a previous project, and it's being used as a proof of concept to show how it could work if you did then scale up and have a bigger battery. There is a megawatt hour battery on site, but it's currently being used by Portsmouth City Council separate to the shore power. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to explain David's point, the battery that was that project was started 4 or 5 years ago, and at that stage the battery was just there to serve the port terminal, so it was to balance the load on the port terminal. So shore power wasn't even considered at that, 4 years ago.
And Chris, as a partner with you on that project, I'll just chip in that the purpose of the battery was it was a proof of concept. It was never intended to be a practical solution to the energy needs of the port. It was to demonstrate the control system within it as more than the battery technology. Although it was an interesting battery technology, being a hybrid lithium-ion lead acid. Yeah,
but it's the same in this project as well. In the sea change, it's about proof of concept around control systems as well as much as anything else, I think. And we've had some discussions in the breakout sessions, and we're talking a lot about just getting to the point where ports have shore power. But then on top of all that, and we touched on it, but there's the operations of it all as well. So there are instances now in Scotland and in Denmark, I think, where we know that certainly for ferries we need really fast charging of batteries, and they don't like that very much. And so there are instances already where batteries have been ruined, and obviously you want to avoid that. But then if you get into that situation, who's liable? Is it the port? Is it the ferry company? So there's all that stuff that we're going to have to unpick and share as well. And I think it's just trying to contribute to some of that understanding.
Yeah, thank you. But my question, it was just because we having that sort of conversation up at Aberdeen as well, and there's the potential, depending on how fast you want to charge a battery on, as to whether you would need high voltage rather than low voltage. And I guess yours is a high voltage system anyway in Portsmouth, whereas ours is probably faster than a low voltage one.
Well, the existing battery is just it's a 440 volt 3-phase. So yeah, because it's connected to the main building supply, but as part of this project, we're moving the battery to next to where the shore power, where it's going to be connected to the 11 kV feeder. And the technology we're going to look at there is to see, can we control the battery to minimize to manage grid constraints. So we're not going to be able to do that, but we can prove the concept. And we also want to prove the concept of, can we optimize for carbon? So if depending on what time of day you charge the battery up, if you charge during the middle of the day, it's going to be 100% green probably. If you charge at 5 o'clock in the evening, it's going to be probably all coming from a gas peaker plant. So it's not going to be much more. It's going to be no benefit to using burning fuel on the ship.
Really interesting. Thanks.
Can I just mention that we met in group 3. We briefly spoke about additional battery capacity within Portsmouth that was proposed but didn't secure funding, but it may well come back hopefully get funding in the future, and that was for the concept of a floating large-scale battery system utilizing flow batteries. And the one of the opportunities there is that the battery itself could be moored alongside a visiting vessel, say a cruise ship, to directly provide power from the battery, and obviously the battery would then be recharged in slow time from partly from the in-port solar systems. Okay.
Thank you. I can't actually see the Q&A. I could bring it up on screen, but I don't want to call anyone out.
There aren't any more at the moment that I've seen. I mean, people can just ask questions, I guess, if they want, but there's none on the Q&A.
No, perfect. Yeah, if anyone does want to shout out, please do. I did anticipate this section being a little bit bigger. Maybe the break should have been just after the breakout room session, but we live and we learn. And the next one will be even more slick. Okay, in terms of dissemination, I think this is a really important one and something that I'm definitely interested in from a tech lead perspective. You know, how does information get presented best to ports and other organizations? Obviously academia is one route, and sort of going through creating large reams of reports and things like that is one route that you can go down. What are the other options? Do people respond better? So our sales team usually say people respond better to sort of PowerPoints and information processed in that way. Does anyone have any ideas of kind of how best to communicate ideas and project success and project challenges, even things like meetings with workshops? Is that then down to the facilitating organization to say, you know, these are the challenges that we've had and communicate that, or is it more about receiving feedback? If anyone has any thoughts on that, that would be really interesting. I appreciate that it is the end of the workshop though, so I do appreciate if people are sore of talking at the moment.
I think that for the Zevi project, there's an opportunity during the demonstration period to have, or there's an opportunity to cover the cost, mind you, but there's an opportunity for having visitors from other ports come and see what's going on.
Yes. Absolutely. I should have mentioned that, Simon. Thank you for reminding me. That is in the terms of reference for SPIG. If anyone was on the fence about it before, they can, of course, come and have a nosy around the shore power system once it's fully operational here in Portsmouth, and we would arrange a half a day site visit where hopefully we can get as many ports down as possible, and we'll be there with our engineering and technical team to answer any questions that you might have.
Amazing. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with the lighting in my room. It is going a bit crazy. So unless anyone wants to shout out any other ideas or bits, equally, please do get in touch with us. I'll flash up, these are my details. But we will send around sort of a thank you for attending and a bit of you know, some words on kind of where you can find us. Both myself and Ellie from Portsmouth as well. I think it would be really useful just to kind of have that in one place. But yeah, I think we can end it there. Thank you so much for everyone. Thank you so much for your time, for all the presenters from our side and from all the attendees. Your contributions are really much appreciated. And yeah, we'll be in touch with kind of how the project progresses and potentially if there are any collaboration opportunities from either side, please do get in touch and we'll try and process that from our side as well. But wonderful. Thank you so much. And we will chat to you all very shortly.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.
Oh. Georgie mentioned there was some sort of pro forma that was being used to collect information from the breakout rooms in Word, maybe.
Oh,
But I haven't got anything, so all I've got is at the moment a load of notes that I've made from my breakout group. But I'll
okay.
drop an email then.
I have a. Sorry, go on.
No, it's just if there's a preferred way to receive it, then I'm happy to fill that in as I'm trying to make a sense of my.
Yeah, no problem. I sent it to you yesterday at 15.
Oh, right, excellent.
So it's already in your inbox, David.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed it then.
Don't be absolutely fine.
I'll go and dig that out and fine. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks all. I'm just waiting to stop the recording. So
okay, cool. I'll go.
I'll get
no, all
Thank
happy.
you very much.
I'm just not sure if the guys want me to stop it or whether it will be saved. Okay, I'll figure that out. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.